Okay, let's get this started here. I'm going to share with you just a couple of quick little things that have nothing to do with the letter bet, but just the Hebrew language to start with. As many of you know, we have capital letters and non-capital letters, right? The shape changes. It's the same thing with the few letters in Hebrew, but instead of having it at the beginning of a word, it's if they appear at the end of a word, it changes shape. Now, if you'll take a look here, here's the whole alphabet. We learned the aleph, and today we're going to look at the bet right here. But notice, for example, that sade appears this way, but if it's at the end of a word, it's like the tail falls down. Do you see that? Okay, there's others. Here's the letter pay, but if it's at the end of a word, it changes shape as well. Here's the letter noon, which is drawn this way, but when it's at the end of a word, it appears that way. So I just want you to know you're going to see different shapes, but it's very similar to English, where depending on where they are, they don't change shape if they're in the middle of the word or the second letter, only if it's at the end. Now, how many of you have ever seen something like this before? Your drop-down box. There's different types of font. Okay, well, I want you to know that there are different fonts in English. Look at all the different ways the word alphabet can be spelled, depending on if there's different fonts. Well, there's different fonts in Hebrew. You'll notice here that this is the aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, shin. But notice here, look how they look different. It's okay. That's the point. She's showing you one type of font. Some people may say that's not the font I learned. Well, great. Learn a new font. Okay. So she's going to draw it a little bit differently than maybe you have, but just know there's different fonts in Hebrew just like there is in English. Okay, so we saw last week how the aleph looked like an ox, and it means an ox or a bull, that which is strong. And now we're going to go to the letter bet, which means a house or a tent. You can see Moses drew a 3-room house. David drew a tent on a landscape. So here's the letter bet, and it is what number? See, you already know that. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to put a little ball in the middle. The letter bet can also be pronounced with the V as vet. But when they don't always use some of the vowel points that we use, that may not be in the Haaretz newspaper, you may not see vowel points. You're supposed to know it just because you know Hebrew. Just like if they don't have vowels, like if you saw the letter HT, you don't know if the middle letter is, if it's hot, hat, hit, hut, okay? But in the sentence, you know if it's talking about a baseball player who hit the ball, you'll know it's hit. Well, it's the same thing. Sometimes when you see Hebrew, you're not always going to see the little ball in the middle, but if you see a ball in the middle, it means it's the B sound. Easy to remember. Ball in the bet means it's a B. If it's not there, it's pronounced with the V. Okay? Makes sense? Okay, give you some examples. What is this word? Av. See, that's father. You already can read Hebrew. Av. Now we're going to put the little ball in the middle. So this is bow. You turn those letters around, you get bow, which means to come. All right? So there you go. That's simple. Now, here is the word. Now we see bet. This is the ball in the middle. It's the B, not the V. How many of you own a house? Okay? Or if you want to buy a house, if you owned a house, your spouse says, what? Buy it, right? That's how you pronounce this, buy it. Okay, buy it means house, all right? And if you'll notice, the house is in the shape of a bet. It has a top, a roof, a back wall, and a bottom. So when you think of a house, that will help you remember the letter bet, okay? Now, here is a word, Breshit, which is the first word of the Bible. In English, it's 3 words, in the beginning. But in Hebrew, it is 1 word. It's Breshit. And you'll notice I have this little ball here. Because when the ball is right there, it's the SH sound. You're going to find this more when we get to the end of the Hebrew alphabet. But if that ball was over in this area, it'd be an S, just an S, not an SH. Okay, so we're going to slowly introduce some things that you're going to see, but you don't really need to know them till later, but we're just trying to begin things So, now, why did the Torah begin with the letter Beit? Breshit. Yes, if you remember, the Aleph is what? Silent. It doesn't have a sound of its own. So the first sound, letter that makes a sound is the letter Beit, and Sherry's going to talk about that more in a little bit. But why did the Torah begin with the letter Beit? We're going to see. Now, do you see these stones of the western wall, right? Now take a look at this. Here's a word we know, Av, which is father. Son. Anyone know the Hebrew word for son? There's Ben or Bar. Here's Ben. It's the B sound with the final noon. Does anyone know the Hebrew word for stone? It's Evan. Okay, so here's Evan. Here you have the Aleph Bet, Ev. There's no ball in the middle of the bet. And the final noon, stone. Well, remember the Bible talks about a stumbling stone that people stumble over? Messiah is the stumbling stone, right? Well, look at the very Hebrew word for stone. It's made up of the word father and the word son. The very word stone is a stone that's made up of the Father and the Son as one stone. Interesting. And then here again we have Psalm 119, and I want you to notice as we go, remember the first 8 verses all have to do with Aleph. The next 8 verses all have to do with the letter Bet. And so the Tet is verse 9, Yud is 10, a Yud Aleph, the Yud is 10, the Aleph is 1, that's 11. So here's verses 9, 10, and 11. And if you notice, even though they're different words in English, how with I, beginning with different letters, in the Hebrew, every word begins with the letter Beit. You following me? Okay, so the second letter is Bet. The second letter is Bet. It's the number 2. It means house, and it's a picture of a house or a tent. With that, we'll turn it over to Sherry.
All right, so I think that you're more than beginners in this class, but that's great. Beit is the first letter of the alphabet to make a sound, which Pastor Mark said, and you have to use the force of your breath to make this sound. So let's practice this, and by putting your hand right up in front of your mouth, and with the force of your breath, make the sound B. B. Do you feel your breath on your back of your fingers? It's amazing, isn't it, how much breath it takes to make the sound of the letter Beit. Okay, so it says B as in boy or bat. And just a hint, for when you get ready to read these letters, when they're in words, don't say buh. Do you hear the behind there? Make it very staccato because it'll mess you all up when you start getting with the vowels. So you make that staccato B sound, okay? All right, Psalm 33:6 says, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. And that really gives you a connection to why the very first letter in the Bible is a Beit. It's his breath that caused creation to happen. All things came from his breath. When you look at the Beit, you see a house or a tent. But I really like to look at it as a Bedouin tent because the front is open. And you can think of Sarah and Abraham living in a Bedouin tent, if you've ever seen one of those. And they were known for their hospitality. You can also relate it to the sukkah, which is also a 3-sided structure, open for those who want to come in and fellowship. And so with all those ideas in mind, let's pick up our pencils and begin to write this letter Beit. Now, Beit is a house or a tent, and we want that house to be solid and secure. So the foundation has to be connected to the walls, and the walls have to be connected to the roof, or it's going to fall down, right? Okay, isn't it amazing that the letter that forms this letter Beit is the letter Vav, which is a connecting letter? Okay, so let's do it. We're going to begin with the first line, which will begin at the top, and you're going to do a horizontal line across like that. Without lifting your pencil, though I just did, you're going to come down to the next line. Now you're going to lift the pencil. you're going to go just past the upper line that is horizontal and just past this vertical line. So see this here? That's not perfectly, what do you call that? Perpendicular?
Horizontal.
It's going past that vertical line, okay? Let's do one more. And what are you going to put in the middle if it's going to say B? You've got to put the dot. Okay. So let's do the next one. You do your horizontal line, come down, straight down, lift up your pencil, come across. And this time we're not going to put the dot. Did you go past the line that comes down vertically? Very important to do that. Okay, without the dot, what's it going to say? V. It's going to make that V as in victory, okay? But no just V. Okay, good. So that's how we make that letter. Now I want to show you something amazing. You already knew how to read the word Av, right? Av, amazingly, is the first two letters in the Hebrew alphabet. So here we have this word, and it is the word Father. Now, do you see this vowel point under the aleph? It's just a line, a horizontal line with a little short vertical line. This is your first vowel point. Whenever you see a line, you're going to say ah. Okay, so when you see the line, what are you going to say? Ah. And what sound does aleph make? Let me hear it. It doesn't make any sound. Okay, that was a trick question. So it's only going to make the sound of the vowel point underneath it. Got it? So now what sound is this letter making? Since anytime you see a line, you're going to say ah. So what does this say?
Ah.
Ah. And the bait without the dot says
V.
V. So you're going to go from
Av.
right to left, Av. That's the first word in the alphabet with the first two letters, and it means father. All right, now I want to show you something. The numerical value of the Av is a 1, and the numerical value of bait is 2, which of course makes 3. That's the smallest numerical value of any word in the Torah. Okay, look at this word. It's a big, long word, and it's tistarer. Tistarer, which you don't have to learn right now. It's not important. But the gematria of this number, or the numerical value of this number, is 1,500. It is the highest numerical value in the Torah. So here we have the Father with the smallest numerical value. And here is the word tistaer, which means he shall rule. Now put those together. The Father, he shall rule. Isn't that amazing that the word with the smallest and the largest numerical values, when you put them together, mean the Father, he shall rule? Yes? Resh. Resh.
Yeah,
both resh. Yes. Okay, I'm almost finished.
That's fine.
Okay, let's do the numerical value of just the bait all by itself. You have a vav here, which is 6, a vav here, which is 6, and a vav here, which is 6, which equals 18. 18 is the number for life, and all life began with the letter bait. It is the very first letter of the Bible, as Pastor Mark said, and it's where he spoke. And you felt the force of the breath on the back of your fingers. His word brought life. And that's our fabulous letter bait.
And then let me add one thing. Put another bait and an aleph.
Okay.
Okay, you saw Av means what? Father. Okay, now, and put a dot there. Now what do you have? Abba. See, notice how the V changed to B? Abba. Av, like dad and daddy. Av is father, Abba is daddy. So you can hear the vet and the vet change. Now, so you don't confuse, the bait is the number 2, but she's talking about how every letter is made up of other letters. And so when you look at the other letters that make up a letter, you can have another number. So we're giving you a lot of that's coming at you at this time.
A lot of information. So the bait all by itself, just as a number, is going to be 2. Everybody clear on that? But when you take each individual part of that bait, which is what letter makes up the bait?
3
the
vav.
vav, and there's 3 of them. Vav equals 6, which equals 18, which is the number of life. So are you clear on that? Raise your hand if you're clear. Okay.
All right, you guys are good. We'll see you next week with the letter Gimel.